101 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Being from Detroit, from the D, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Toughness, creativity, resilience. But there are also decades-old stereotypes about Detroit and its people. Ones that cast Detroit in a shadow of crime and poverty. Yet one thing folks know to be true about native Detroiters, they are proud to be from this city.
Yup. Yes, we are, Robin. Detroit has amazing exports, from music to cars, but our people, born and raised in Detroiters, really shine here. We really shine. From the way we speak to the way we dress, you can always spot a Detroiter even when you're hundreds of miles away in another city. Being from Detroit means something different than being from other cities. It means you come from one of the blackest cities in America, a place where the conditions are ripe for black creation. And for one Detroit native, being from Detroit has created a strong foundation for her career to thrive on. We're talking about Tonya Mosley, Emmy award-winning journalist and co-host of Fresh Air. Tonya, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
What an introduction. I mean, I'm about to be teary over here. I love this. It's such a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Having a native Detroiter who's reached certain heights is really, really amazing to have you across from us right now. So my biggest thing to you is, number one, I always ask Detroiters, what part of Detroit are you from?
I'm from the West Side, 7 Mile Southfield area.
7 Mile, better mile.
That's right.
And then as well, when you do come to the city, what's one of the first things you want to do? If you have time, of course, and you're not working, what's one of the first things you want to do? What's your favorite coney?
Oh, okay. So, this is a good one. I just had a coney like 2 days ago, and the one on 7 Mile and Greenfield. I don't know the name of it, but it's right there in the corner. It's catty corner to Burger King, and then there's like a CVS across. Is it called? No, it's not called. I can't remember what it's called, but it's really good.
I know our producers are on it right now. We're gonna get to the name of it, but
and then also, I mean, because it's all around food, I do end up. I had Buddy's Pizza the other day. I always just gain maybe 5 pounds every time I come home. That's just the truth.
Yeah, it's hard to live here.
It is
for that
hard
reason.
to live here, and it's a Nikki D's, which is
yes, that's right, of course.
Nikki D's is so great.
Yeah.
But just getting back to it, growing up and being from the city of Detroit, growing up during the 90s, what has changed about Detroit and what's the same?
Oh, that's such a good question. Last summer, I had this experience where I came home, and for the first time, I thought, Detroit is no longer my Detroit anymore. It's grown in so many amazing ways. But, I've been gone from the city. I left when I was 18 to go to college. I came back and I worked for a few years in the city before leaving again. And so every time I come home, the city is the city. It's the same. But over the last decade or so, I've seen a growth in a way that I had never seen in my lifetime or even heard in my mother's lifetime. And so in a good way, but bittersweet way, I came home last summer and I just saw the vibrant downtown Detroit. I saw all of these people walking, people looking at their phones. They don't seem like they're afraid. This is a really important thing. And I thought, Detroit has now evolved, that I can be a part of it, but I can't I can always claim it, but it's not the same place in that way when I was younger.
Yeah, which is just so interesting. Same thing. I haven't been gone long. I didn't stay away gone. I went to school and I came back. But when I did came back, that little short time, I started to notice those changes as well.
Yes.
And since then, I mean, it's just been an incredible ride and journey to see what Detroit is becoming and continue to see what it's becoming. But we're going to switch gears just a little bit here. And I think about a lot of journalists in public media. You set a high bar. You inspire so many of us in our work, not just in your success, but in how you do the work and the mix of clarity and empathy. So who did you get your inspiration from, or who was your Tonya Mosley?
Oh,
I know these questions, man. Okay, so there are so many, okay? So I'll start with the Detroit folks, and then I'll move to the national stage. But, I loved all the local television news folks. So I loved the grace of Carmen Harlan on Channel 4. Mitch Albom, though, was my guy. When I was 13 years old, I first happened upon his column in the Detroit Free Press, his Sunday paper column. And he would have these stories that were human interest stories about sports figures. And there was such a humanness to it that I felt like I want to be a writer like him one day. And then he had a show on Fox 2, and then he had a radio show. And I was the nerd who would call into his radio show every week, and he would have me on. I would ask a question to John Sally or Isaiah Thomas or those folks, and they would indulge me as a teenager. On the national stage, I was a latchkey kid, so I was coming home every day and watching Oprah at 4:00. And so I think she's always been an inspiration to so many of us who are in this field.
Indeed. Started at NPR, started working at Weekend Edition, and I just thought, when I heard your voice and I heard Aisha Roscoe and I heard Jen White, I just thought to another Detroiter.
Yes.
And I just thought to myself, there's a lane, there's a path for us to do this, and a lot of other women of color as well. So when you were coming up, what was the state of diversity in journalism? You just heard me call out so many more names now. So what was it like for you then versus now?
That's a really interesting question because I was an apprentice at the Detroit Free Press when I was 15 years old, and that was my entryway into news. And that program was so diverse, and Detroit is so diverse, that I never really was aware that I might be entering a predominantly white space until I graduated from college and had my first jobs in journalism. And that's when I started to see, I'm the only one in this newsroom. In fact, I'm a token in this newsroom. And so I've kind of moved through these spaces and understood that. But with that, I came to understand what my role was in those newsrooms. I can't just be the brown face on camera or behind the mic. I also have to tell more complete stories about my people and the places where I worked. And I've had the privilege to work, I think it's 7 states throughout the country as a reporter, which has given me this I'm really feel blessed to have an understanding of the tapestry of America in a way that if I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't understand. And also the diversity within us as people of color, because I think that oftentimes, we are described as a monolith, especially in media. And so to be able to see the complexities of us allows me to get closer to the truth in my work.
And it's so great that you hit on that tokenism, because there was one of the things that I was thinking about, especially just being a Black reporter. I know Robin and I talk about just being women of color and telling certain stories, especially stories about our communities, and not feeling tokenized and not feeling like we're doing a disjustice or doing more harm to our community than we are doing positive or good. So, how do you navigate through those obstacles when you're telling stories?
I think that it's our duty, it's our role to bring our lived experience to the table. I know that's a controversial thought and idea because we're supposed to be impartial, we're supposed to be objective, but your role is also to bring your knowledge and bring that context and understanding. And so it may be considered a burden, but it actually is a gift to be able to bring my lived experience to understand the lived experience of other people. And believe it or not, we all do that. We kind of make it like people of color are this, there's white, and white is neutral. It is the space, it's the middle. It's objective. And then everything else is subjective. But when you think about that, we're all coming from a point of view, and our lived experience plays a big role in the way that we report out what's happening in the world.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent alongside Tia Graham. We're talking with Tonya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air and a proud Detroiter. We want to move forward to some of the coverage that you've done in recent years, some of your important work. January 6th, 2021, you were on air with live coverage, making sense of something that had many of us very confused, very shocked, and that was the insurrection at the Capitol. What was going through your mind?
Whoa. So first off, if we can go back to January 6, 2021, we were still in the thick of the pandemic, and I was hosting Here and Now, which is NPR's midday show, from my closet because none of us were in newsrooms. We couldn't be. And because I was in a closet, we knew that something was happening. I had one computer to my left and another computer to my right. And when you watch live video on your computer, there is a delay. There's like a major delay. So like the rest of the world, I was live on air trying to make sense of what we were seeing. And it really wasn't until days and weeks later that we all became clear on what we had just experienced. But I'll never forget that. I was on air for 6 hours that day. And I literally, from my closet, I think I crawled to my bed. I knew within my heart that like something had really changed within our country at that moment.
6 hours of live coverage, Tonya Mosley?
I know, right?
Wow.
Sometimes it happens that way. This is a historic moment and we didn't know what was happening, but it was evolving and things were happening. We were hearing stories that were happening inside of the Capitol that we could not confirm, but we just needed to keep going in order to provide as much information as we could. Yeah.
Yeah, that really, for listeners, we have to kind of explain this for people. That is a lot. You have to draw from so much knowledge, foundational knowledge, to be able to be on air for 6 hours live, talking about implications and trying to make sense of something in real time, especially something as unprecedented as that.
What's wonderful is that we have amazing producers. So once my knowledge was up, I have producers who are also sending me information because it is a challenge to be able to hold space for that long. But I think also the listeners understand because they also know that we are dealing with something that's happening in real time. So real human, authentic conversation about it as we're trying to make sense of it, I think was a valuable resource to people.
That's also a good reminder, though. Tia and I would be nothing without our producers.
Yes, of course. There's amazing folks here.
Yes. Years later, now President Trump is back in office. And one of the things that was on the ticket was democracy. What do you think this says about the state of democracy? Kamala Harris was really running on that notion of the importance of protecting our democracy. And a lot of folks said there are other things that are important to me. What do you make of where we're at?
I think I'm like the rest of the country and the world where I'm trying to make sense of this moment while also I am a student of history and understanding what this moment might mean for our future and really trying to sit in my role and understand the importance of information giving to people. The wonderful thing about public media is that we can offer context. We can offer that historical perspective to give us a deeper understanding of where we are. I think the biggest fear and the thing that keeps me up at night right now is that we're so polarized in this country. And in many ways, if you're a public radio listener, you are we're preaching to the choir. We're talking to people who are already well informed and they want to know more information. But how do we get the truth out to other people who are not listeners? That is the thing that I'm thinking about. It's the thing that I encounter when I come home, quite honestly, because the majority of the people in my life at home are not public media listeners. I'll be honest. I get them to listen because I'm on the radio,
Same.
And so with that, though, it's a reminder to me of how much esteem how much they hold me in esteem and they trust me because I have family members and friends who will ask me all the time the questions that you're asking me. What do I think of this? What should we make of this? And so I feel like my purpose is to give that information so that we can make sense of it and then take action if we need to take action and understand like that. I do want to say this. I'm going to kind of go off that. Like I've been meditating and sitting with how important community is. Like community is the key and the path forward. And I think that the polarization in our world has really taken away some of that communal understanding, like to build change over the last few years.
This resonates with the Metro team very much because we're often talking about how do we reach new listeners and to that end as well, though, community. What does community look like? What should it look like? Can you talk a little bit more about that? What do you see community, the role that community should be playing, and what does it look like or should it look like?
Yeah, community comes in so many different forms. It's so vast. But what I'm thinking about is, times in history where organizing and mobilization comes together to bring change. And in many instances, that could be your neighborhood, that can be your church, that can be your school, it can be your activist organizations, whatever that looks like for you, but coming together for a common cause is what I think about when I think about community. And also the care and feeding of each other. That's so important and something that we don't think about often. I just had an interview that I did here yesterday on loneliness. And one of the things that we talked about, I was like, do you know your neighbors? Do you know all of your neighbors on your block, on your street? Do you know their phone numbers? Something that I came upon a few years ago as a journalist out in the field when tragic things happen and I would go to the scene, of the crime or something horrific. So often people would say they don't know their neighbors. So they didn't know the folks who live next door to them. They would just see them come and go from their house every day. That's a difference from when I started 20 years ago when I would go out on the scene. People knew each other. So that's something that I'm reflecting on as I think about community.
This epidemic of loneliness is something we've been talking about on the Metro as well. And I wonder then if you see a direct tie between the polarization that we're seeing and loneliness and the fact that we are feeling increasingly separated from each other and folks are moving out of cities and into bigger homes in the suburbs and creating these nice little sanctuaries where it feels safe and good, but they never then have to leave and are not interacting with each other.
100%. I can say in authority because the data bears that out, that that the polarization that we're feeling in our country is just a further manifestation of like the loneliness, but it also is, and this conversation I just had about this with an expert about it is our technology is kind of what is at the central core of that polarization because we're so connected to our phones and to social media. We think of that as community. It is a form of community, but it is not that true community and communal longing that we need for each other. It's a human instinct for us to connect with each other on a person-to-person level.
So let's just take this thing back to public media for a second. The NPR audience, which we know is still overwhelmingly white, something we're all aware of here at WDET. But being an NPR member station, especially in one of the blackest cities in America, do you feel a responsibility or pressure to be more than Tonya Mosley, for example? Do you, to help make NPR more accessible for Black people, do you feel like you have that on your shoulders?
You know what? When I first joined public media, I felt that. But I felt it in an exciting way. Like, oh, I'm here. I'm going to tell them all the things I know and I can bring people to the table. That was 6 years ago. And I think we got the data back that the percentage points have only gone up 1 or 2 points, in that 6 years of listenership. I no longer feel like that is on my shoulders. I just feel like my role is to bring the truth to the radio airwaves and to offer context, to offer my knowledge, and also bring guests on who can show a fuller lens of our world and their experiences of all races, ethnicities, and age groups. I'm very much aware and cognizant when I'm choosing guests for Fresh Air, books that I'm reading, celebrities that I have on, experts that we talk to. I'm very intentional in making sure that we are speaking to a full, wide breadth of what our nation is.
And before we let you go, my last question to you is, why are you proud to be from Detroit?
Oh, my gosh. I loved your intro so much because I actually didn't understand how much I love and talk about Detroit until I was in college. I had a boyfriend write a poem to me, and it was all about Detroit. He was like, every third sentence is Detroit for you, Tonya. And, everyone and everywhere I go, I carry it as a badge of honor that I'm from Detroit. Detroit is such a resilient place. It's also a place that, it's a place of migrants. So many of us came from somewhere else. We are third and fourth generation Detroiters, but we came here in search of something. And we were in search of that light and prosperity, many of us through the automotive industry. And I think that light still shines in us. It still keeps us moving. And I feel it every time I come home. I was telling my mom that I read that Detroit is no longer on the list of like one of the most violent or dangerous places anymore. And I can feel that. And so I am so proud of Detroit as it moves forward and becomes a deeper, more fuller version of itself. And I'll be carrying that badge with me forever.
Tonya Mosley is the co-host of Fresh Air. Tonya, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you. And congratulations on this show. It's such a wonderful one.
From the WDET newsroom, Jocelyn Benson's number 2 man wants her job. Deputy Secretary of State Agogo Edevby will seek the Democratic nomination for Secretary of State in 2026. Benson is running for governor.
Coming up at 11, there is a lot of money in politics, and the current presidential team is only continuing that trend. Donald Trump's administration has people who have over $328 billion together, and those individuals want to run the country like a business. And so next hour, we want to ask you, should we run government like a business? Give us a call, let us know, 313-577-1019.
Up next, Detroit's parks are the city's unsung heroes. We'll take some time to assess their health and how we can become better stewards of them. We'll be right back here on the Metro. Stay with us.